Today's episode is brought to you by Righteous Felon. If you're on the hunt for a delicious, high-protein snack, look no further than Righteous Felon. This family-owned brand is all about premium pasture-raised Black Angus beef, hormone and antibiotic-free with mouth-watering flavors like OG hickory and 10 grams of protein per serving. You'll get the boost you need for all your adventures. Plus, they have keto-friendly and gluten-free options, and they support sustainability with the Conservation Alliance. Ready to snack smarter? Use promo code Minutecast. That's the promo code MINUTECAST for 15% off your order. Head on over to righteousfelon.com or follow the link in the show notes and grab your new favorite snack today.
Minutecast Media.
10,000!
Hello and welcome in to this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Believe in Nats. That's BLEAV in Nats. And the best way that you can help grow this show is to subscribe or follow the Nats Minutecast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. So in this edition of the Nats Minutecast, we talk about two players that we need to see a whole lot more of in the 2026 season. And ultimately, their rise or fall will help determine the Nationals' future. And it's interesting, two players that could have such an impact. Who are those players? Let's talk about the first one here in segment one, and that is James Wood. In his defense, we'll decide if he is a superstar, because the biggest takeaway I'm going to say on him is James Wood becomes even an average defender. He can become a superstar, in my opinion, and that's where we'll start, because we already know that James Wood, who he is with the bat, 24 home runs in the first half last year. At 23 years old, that's not normal. That's not good young guy stuff. That's franchise cornerstone stuff. But here's the thing, and this is where I lean in a little bit here. If he fixes the glove, we're not just talking all-star. We're talking at national level star, right? And, last season, he finished at -7 outs above average, and that matters. It's not, catastrophic, but, it's a drag, right? And when you're that big, he is a big human. Every step matters. Wood said the key this offseason was preparation, being ready every pitch, pre-step work, trusting the read. And I love that, right? Because that's mental growth. That is maturity. And he's been working with bench coach Michael Johns down at IMG. Johns has outfield development background from Tampa. That's not random, that's targeted improvement. And manager Blake Butera talked about reads off the bat and route efficiency. That's it. That's the whole thing. He runs well for his size. He has the hands. This isn't about ability. It's about trust and reaction. And if he turns those minus plays into neutral, if he saves even 3 or 4 runs instead of costing them, now you're looking at a 30-homer bat with positive defense in the right or left field. We've seen him in the left field quite a bit. And that's not just a good player. That's a face of the franchise guy. And I think he gets there. But that, like I said, the rise and fall of James Wood, for example, will determine on what position the Nationals take. I think that on paper, we look at the outfield and we think to ourselves, yep, that looks pretty good. Got James Wood. We've seen Jacob Young out there, Dylan Cruz, glimpses of Robert Hassel, these kind of guys out there. But we need to see more, and that's the hard part. We need to see a proof of concept that these guys are, ultimately who we had hoped for, because unless it translates translates from being good on paper to actuality, then it's not worth a whole lot. And that's where we're at here. All right, next, let's talk about better defense changes the entire pitching staff. So the biggest takeaway here is the Nationals' ugly ERA last year wasn't just on the pitchers. It was the defense. So let's go into the weeds here and talk about something that doesn't get enough airtime. That the staff ERA was 5.35, and that's bad, like real bad. And but the expected ERA 4.82. And that's telling you something. Defense hurt this team. And, like I talked about, Woods knows that, right? He flat out said, improving defensively as a team is how they make a leap. We've seen gaffes in the field before, C.J. Abrams, these kind of players, that it's not just on Wood or the outfield, but it's big picture, 30,000-foot view. The defense needs to improve, that the onus of the ugliness of the ERA, those kind of things, doesn't go squarely on the pitcher's shoulder. And what talking about, what James Wood said there, he's right, because if you think about it, when your young pitchers are nibbling because they don't trust the defense behind them, well, that spirals quickly. And, but if Wood improves, if Jacob Young continues to be elite, we've seen things from who else? Dale and Lyle, right? If they build off his second half, now the margins tighten. Now the contact management actually shows up in results. Pitchers attack more. Counts get shorter. Bullpen stress drops. It all connects. This is why I care about, Wood's defense almost as much as his power. Because the leap for this team in 2026, it's not just about adding offense. That's what we want to see. Those are the sexy storylines to talk about. Home runs, right? A double, a triple, those kind of things that, defense, defense doesn't get the love that offense does, but it is equally, if not more important in certain cases. Because, it's all about competence behind the ball. And if that improves even modestly, you could shave half a run off the team ERA without changing a single arm. And at the end of the day, that is development. All right, so coming up here after the break, the other big player, that we need to see a whole lot more from. I'm talking about Dylan Crews. Is he the guy? Is he the alpha? Is he going to be the leader of this franchise that's primarily young? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of the Nats Minutecast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. So talking Crews. And a lot of hope. We saw what he did at LSU. You remember, think back, it was Skeens, it was Crews. At the end of the day, Skeens, as we know, went to the Pirates, and Crews is a national. And there was a lot of hope that this guy is going to be next level. And, the hard part about young players, prospects, those kind of things, is their trajectory, their arc, if you will. It doesn't always translate into real time. And, we talk about the hot start of James Wood earlier. In that same breath, we also need to talk about Dylan Crews and ultimately how I think he could be one of the leading voices on this team. But in order to get the respect of the clubhouse, you need to back that up with results. How are you batting? How are you out in the field? Because he's a young guy, on a team of primarily young players. And if you're a young guy trying to make a statement, try to be the leader, we need to get better defensively, and you're not good defensively. We need to see more offense, and you're not good offensively. You need to start to connect the dots. So let's talk about Crews. And in a lot of ways, he is officially on the clock, because the biggest takeaway from this final segment is that 2026 is make or break for Dylan Crews, and that's not dramatic and slightly hyperbolic. I think that they're not going to trade him, right? That if it doesn't work out, but I think that, like I said, these players that, we had sketched out as being big names of the future, we need to see a whole lot more. So let's pivot from Wood to Crews here, because Dylan Crews is entering the season under pressure. And, I think I don't say that too lightly either. I think that we need to see more. Former number 2 overall pick, the superlatives, Golden Spikes winner at LSU, massive hype, massive expectations. But through 116, isn't it, big league games, a 211 average and a 352 slugging percentage there. So, that's not impact production. Now, that is important. The expected numbers are kinder. 239 expected average, 401 expected slug. So, yeah, some bad luck, some variance, but here's where I lean opinionated. Luck evens out over time. Impact tools have to show up. The hard hit rate last year was 38.7%. And that's 29th percentile territory. That's not, future star territory where a lot of us had penciled him in. And he only played 85 games because of that oblique. So here's the checklist. The biggest thing for him, and a lot of this is outside of his control, it is and it isn't, is to stay healthy. That, I said that there's a lot expected, and a lot of his future, a lot of the Nationals' future is running through him, that he needs to stay healthy. That's a big thing. What kind of Cruz would we have seen if he was healthy all of last season? Next, he needs to increase barrel rate, drive the baseball consistently, because here's the thing. This outfield is crowded. Wood is ascending. Jacob Young is elite defensively. And who else? Dalen Lyle, right? He flashed real offensive upside. Now, if he stagnates, the playing time gets a whole lot more competitive, right? And that's not organization giving up. That's just reality in a rebuild. And I still believe in the talent. The college track record wasn't a fluke. You don't slash 426, 567, 713 off the top of my head in the SEC by accident. But, the big league adjustments matter. And, this season determines whether he's a cornerstone or just part of the mix. And in a lot of ways, that's why 2026 is massive for him. And we need to see a whole lot more. But I think that, like I said, it is about James Wood. It is about Dylan Cruz. It's about a lot of players. But I think that the Nationals really hung their hat on those two players, that those are going to be the future stars of this team. At the end of the day, seeing is believing. We need to ultimately see a whole lot more big picture, not just a strong start and then dropping off in the latter part of the season. We need to see a great season from front to back for James Wood and Dylan Cruz to truly judge where this team is at. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of the Nats Minutecast. All of your Nats news in about 15 minutes or less. And at the end of the day, Nationals news lives here on the Nats Minutecast. And I'll talk to you again next time.